The early work was ecological in the sense that it was creating a green place in the city, in a very urban place. It was obviously contrasting the green with the gray of the concrete and the asphalt and the hard edges. When we're dealing with ecological systems, we're looking at a whole system. It's a much more complex interrelationship of phenomena. Portable Parks 1 through 3 was the first public artwork that I did. And it was about, the idea was to transform dead spaces, very simply. At the time, I didn't believe that anything was permanent. So the first portable park site was on the freeway where it crossed Market Street. And for 24 hours, we had palm trees, sod, and a cow, and myself on the freeway. And that was to be viewed from either the ground or driving by. So it was more like a still life. And the second portable park was more participatory. It was on concrete islands at the Mission Van Ness off-ramp. And for the next 24 hours, there were the palm trees and sod and more cows and picnic tables and bales of straw and chickens. And people could come and actually use what had been formerly just a dead concrete space. And then the third site was even more participatory, and that was Maiden Lane near Union Square, and that was actually for 48 hours. And for that piece, I also borrowed animals from the zoo, the San Francisco Zoo. And the whole street was covered with sod. It was closed off to traffic, and it became a park for 2 days. So each of those portable parks was increasingly more participatory. Sitting Still 1 was another very important piece for me. I think of it now as my watershed piece, because at the time I was exploring the nature of performance and exploring the nature of what an audience could be. And I saw this found environment. And I was also exploring the idea of a performance in a created environment or in a found environment, in a variety of places. I was looking at the place, I was looking at the performance in the place, and I was looking at the audience. So I was looking at all of those different elements in what a performance is about or could be. So I happened by this area where garbage and water had collected because there was a construction of the 101 freeway interchange it was then called Army and Potrero. And in the center of this garbage was this overstuffed armchair, and there was all these other things like a bicycle floating around. So I saw this and I immediately went home and put on an evening gown, called my friend Robert Campbell and asked him to come and photograph this in a particular way. And I waded into the water and sat in the chair and faced the audience that was made of the people in the cars moving very slowly because of the construction. But what was exceptionally profound about Sitting Still 1, unbeknownst to me at the time in 1970, is that I was facing what would become Crossroads Community, the farm, literally, and I was facing the northern frame of the Islayas Creek watershed, which I'm currently very engaged in working with. But in 1970, I took the idea of the seated human figure because I thought this was interesting, and I took a chair with me to different street corners, different communities in San Francisco and different places. I sat for a time at Mission and 20th Street in the Mission. I sat at Church and Market Street. Then I went to the financial district, the original Occupy, sat at California and Montgomery Street, sat on the Bank of America Plaza. Then I went to the Golden Gate Bridge and sat facing the traffic. And then I sat in various indoor-outdoor cages in the San Francisco Zoo. And that culminated in the public lunch. I had been in the zoo, and I was paying attention to the animals and my presence in relation to them. And I got permission to create this public lunch where I thought it would be really interesting to have a human meal adjacent to the tigers and lions in the Lion House. at the public feeding time on a Saturday at 2 p.m. when people would come to the zoo to see the animals being fed. Well, I was one of the animals being fed. And I, of course, was a human animal, a woman, and an object on view, as were the tigers and lions. After I finished eating, I climbed up the ladder to this platform where I lay down and looked up at the skylight above, and it was very beautiful, and I was kind of experiencing what was happening. And while I was doing that, the tiger in the adjacent cage got up on his haunches and looked at me. And it was at that moment that I realized this animal is looking at me. Maybe he's perceiving me. What is he thinking? What is he feeling? And so that led me to then begin working with multiple species of animals, studying their behavior. In the cage with me during public lunch was another cage. And in the cage was a white rat. So it was the idea of a cage within a cage within a cage. Who is in the cage? Is the audience in the cage? Am I in the cage? Is the white rat in the cage? So it was a way of opening up this experience and the meaning of this experience. Crossroads Community, the farm, was a very significant work, and it was a collaborative work. It involved many people. For me, I saw this place, and immediately I saw, obviously in Sitting Still 1, I was very aware of the freeway interchange because I had incorporated that into the piece that I had done several years prior. And so I saw this as an opportunity to bring together people with each other from different communities, people with plants and animals, and connect all of these land fragments. So the idea was to create the farm also as an alternative to alternative art spaces, which it was. So it was one of the first alternative art spaces in the country, but not a white gallery space, but a real series of different kinds of environments.